Welcome to the American Relief Act video podcast series, part 4 on administration and finance, hosted on Government Technology Insider. I'm your host, Matt Langen. Citizens interact with state and local government agencies in their everyday lives, from checking out a library book to paying property tax bills and much, much more. And behind every transaction with government is an administration and finance function that relies on technology for these and many other kinds of financial and data management activities. The back office function in government is critical to providing citizens the right services. However, many agencies are running a patchwork of on-prem legacy systems that are difficult to change and impossible to scale to high volume demand, and security is always a top concern. Moreover, physical disasters such as wildfires, earthquakes, and floods, as well as the recent pandemic, have necessitated agencies to examine disaster recovery and business continuity plans in order to protect these critical assets. And one solution for many of these back office functions is to move to a cloud infrastructure, and many have actually selected the Oracle Cloud infrastructure to do that job. And today we're joined by Sarju Shah, who is the Industry Executive Director for State and Local Government at Oracle, who will discuss this topic further. And Sarju, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Matt. How are you? Glad to be part of this.
I'm doing well. Yeah, thanks for joining us as well. And let's jump right in. So clearly we're in an era of tight budgets for state and local government. So how can cloud infrastructure make an agency more nimble? And for instance, at the start of a state's fiscal year, often there's a new tax rate that might be implemented. And how can the cloud help with these types of implementations?
So cloud-based offerings for ERP, specifically that are available on the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, enable changes such as tax rates to be parameter-driven, which means that you don't have to custom code for those changes. These will result in a significant reduction in development and deployment costs. Additionally, on-premise deployment might cause state government entities to engage in an acquisition of potentially compute or storage resources. And cloud is usually pay per use, so you only pay for what you use and not have to provision for the 1 month in the year that you might peak usage. And then finally, cloud helps convert capital dollars into OpEx dollars, which gives more predictability to state government budgets, which is a big thing because they are usually budgeted for certain things at a certain amount for every year. And this brings some predictability to those costs.
Okay, great. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially during the early days, March, April, May of 2020, many government agencies were actually able to keep their operations going via remote work. So how did cloud infrastructure really help to keep City Hall open?
So on-premise infrastructure requires handhold, you know that, and human presence to upgrade if you wish to upgrade. However, cloud-based infrastructure can be scaled up or down on demand without human presence. For example, here in Oklahoma, when the pandemic hit last year, March, we had to upgrade our VPN appliance because we were only provisioned for about 1,000 users or so, and we had to take that up to 30,000 users. And for that, we had to acquire a couple of new VPN appliances that could handle that volume. And at the same time, everybody in the world was also trying to acquire that particular appliance. And so we had a long waiting period, which caused some delays. But when you look at cloud-based VPN, for example, you can scale the VPN connections literally with a bunch of clicks, as opposed to acquiring and then installing, testing, then training, all that. So I feel that cloud-based infrastructure provides a lot of agility to state government agencies and not have to go through that much of a procurement cycle. Another example is, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Oracle Cloud hosts Zoom. Before the pandemic, Zoom was worldwide hosting about 10 million meetings a day. After the pandemic hit, they were hosting 300 million meetings a day. And since Zoom was an OCI, we were able to quickly scale and give Zoom the capacity it needed to host 300 million meetings a day. So that's one point. The other point is redundancy and high availability architecture, which is a mostly overlooked item. But if you're really looking at business continuity during disruptive events such as the pandemic, cloud-based architecture really provides for a cheaper alternative to architecting for high availability as opposed to standing up a new data center.
All right. Excellent. Let's switch over and talk about cyber. I mean, cyber is everywhere. It's top of mind for many government agencies. And there's also the rise of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies that have really made it easier for hackers to extort large sums of money. So with that in mind, how can moving to the cloud protect against these types of criminals? And what about the internal security concerns, employees who try to access confidential files?
That's a good question. And I'll answer both through 3 points. The first one being reduced risk. So cloud-based infrastructure helps strengthen the security posture and reduce risk with security-first design principles that center on providing built-in security controls. These include zero trust architecture, isolated network virtualization in the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, and strict separation of duties within the Oracle database. The second point is automation. We can reduce complexity significantly, prevent human error, and lower the cost with automated patching for autonomous databases and threat mitigation for Oracle Cloud. This is also provided through our CASB cloud service and identity cloud service. We can leverage real-time threat intelligence feeds and machine learning techniques to establish security baselines, learn the behavioral patterns, and identify threats to the cloud stack. The third point is data protection, which is how do you keep the data of your business protected? And we do that using always-on encryption and continuous monitoring of our user behavior with our autonomous database and Oracle Cloud infrastructure, which further mitigates the risk that you posed in your question.
All right, great. Sarju, really appreciate your time today. And our last question is really going to focus on kind of hiring, HR side of things. And it often takes government agencies a long time to make hiring decisions, and the candidate has often found another opportunity before an offer can actually be made. Definitely a timing gap there. So how can the cloud help recruiting and hiring processes to bring in new talent to government?
So cloud-based HR solutions, especially the ones that are on Oracle Cloud, provide agility and empowerment via the use of artificial intelligence machine language. And that is what can provide government with better speed, as well as integration to all the activities that have to happen for hiring, such as civil service testing, interviews, selection, and onboarding. Within hiring, we have several features that allow candidates to schedule their own interviews, which removes that task from the hiring teams. They can go and schedule themselves for their availability. We have automation tools that can help automate job postings, candidate communication, screening interviews, all that. And then on the onboarding side, we have tailored onboarding tasks and activities so that when a candidate has accepted the offer, between the time the candidate accepts the offer and the actual start date, the candidate can go and do a lot of onboarding tasks before the start date, which really speeds up the actual assimilation into the culture, as well as getting productive from day one.
All right, excellent. Well, this concludes this episode of the American Relief Act video podcast series, part 4 on administration and finance, hosted on Government Technology Insider, where Sarju Shah, who's the Industry Executive Director for State and Local Government at Oracle, really discussed how cloud infrastructure is enhancing the core finance and administration functions for state and local government agencies. And Sarju, thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.